To the, like, 10 people that voted on this poll back in January, don't think I forgot about you guys. I told you I was making this video, and I'd like to think I'm a man of my word, so here it is. Sure, it's like 5 months later than it probably should have been, but I've got 16 hours of gameplay, 1 movie, and ludicrous amounts of lore to go over, so I don't want to hear it. I'm going to apologize in advance because I get the feeling this video is going to be longer than my last one, which, if you're a fan, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if this is your first time finding my channel, then I'm so sorry. Come back in a year when I drop a feature-length film about Dishonored. Jokes aside, I'll actually start talking about the game now, since that's what you probably clicked on this video for. Releasing towards the end of 2019, Jedi Fallen Order was a fantastic send-off to the year for anyone who wasn't busy playing the PlayStation-exclusive Amazon Apocalypse Simulator or getting cyberbullied in COD lobbies. Actually, now that I think about it, I feel like there's a surprising amount of overlap between Call of Duty players and Star Wars fans. Both are just grown men getting upset at pixels on a screen. Main difference is one will dox you and call you slurs, and the other sends death threats to children. Why the fuck am I making this video? Whatever, I made this bed, it's time to lie in it. So without further ado, Jedi Fallen Order is, overall, a pretty good game. Thanks for watching. Okay, I've pussyfooted around it long enough. What do I actually think about the game? Well, like I said, it's a pretty damn good game. With a compelling story, interesting characters, beautiful environments, and solid combat, it's honestly difficult to find things I don't like. That's not to say this game isn't without its problems, just that they're hard to find, as well as a bit nitpicky if I'm completely honest. So let's save the story and characters for last, and we'll talk about the everything else first. Starting with the combat, since that seems to be one of the major selling points, and for good reason too. In the same way the Arkham games make you feel like Batman, or how Insomniac's Spider-Man makes you feel like Spider-Man, Fallen Order really makes you feel like Star Wars, or at least as well as it can while keeping a T for teen rating. Maybe I'm just jaded to gore, but I think the combat would have been more immersive if I was able to rip through stormtroopers the same way Taco Bell rips through bathrooms. That's not to say a lack of gore detracts from the combat, it's still plenty violent in its own right, but I wouldn't be bringing this up if it wasn't incredibly obvious that Respawn wanted to make this game rated M. See, in addition to the space Nazis, you also get the pleasure of fighting the various fauna on each planet you visit, and by fight, I mean brutalize them in ways that would make PETA blush. Mainly via sundering and dismemberment, but just imagine how fucking sick it would look if you could do the same to the stormtroopers. Even some of the finishers you can perform look like they were meant to be more graphic until some Disney executive cracked down because Star Wars is supposed to be family-friendly. You know, the same franchise where a child slave gets bought into a cult and ends up playing part in a genocidal conquest where he personally carries out late-term abortion en masse. Wholesome family fun, am I right? Can't really blame them though, it's not like there's ever been a piece of child-friendly media that tackles world issues and mature topics in an engaging and entertaining way. Must be a real challenge, I'm sure. Let's play a game. I give you 2 options, you tell me which one's more difficult. Is it A, teaching children about mature topics, or B, playing Fallen Order on Grandmaster difficulty? If you said A, I'm sorry, you're wrong. But we're not ready to have that conversation, so let's talk about difficulty settings instead. Fallen Order features 4 of them, those being Story Mode, Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, and Jedi Grandmaster. If you're curious as to what the difference is, they have this handy little graph that tells you exactly what you're signing up for. The most notable differences here are the parry timing and incoming damage, with Grandmaster turning it into a near Souls-like experience, and Story Mode making it so easy that I could confidently puppeteer a corpse through this game. TLDR, Lobotomite, Saved by the Bell Curve, Set the Bell Curve, and fucking Gamer. We're going to be focusing more on the fucking gamer setting since I'm not a bitch, but I am a masochist. As I said, playing on Grandmaster turns the game into a near Souls-like experience, meaning everything that can kill you probably will, more than once, unless you get good. Which, albeit, isn't really that hard, seeing as the combat design mimics certain aspects of similar games in the genre. What I mean is that you can essentially get through every combat encounter by pressing like 3 buttons. Look, I said the combat was good, not complex. Besides, playing on the gamer setting, you have to actually think about when you press one of those 3 buttons unless you enjoy getting stun-locked longer than it took Goku to fight Frieza. I'll circle back around to this, but I feel like I should explain how combat works from a mechanical standpoint before I start to bitch about any of its technical issues. You have 2 options when it comes to combat, lightsaber and force abilities. Mainly lightsaber, since you can only use your force abilities in combat by beating the shit out of your enemies, like a true Jedi. Even then, your lightsaber combat is mainly limited to blocks and light attacks, since literally everything from throwing your lightsaber to hitting harder requires force. So if you want to look fucking sick, you need to master the combat, but on the harder difficulties, you're discouraged from mastering the combat due to the force meter, which wouldn't be much of a problem if you had more than 3 options to upgrade said force meter. Meaning that if you want to actually engage with all the mechanics provided to you, then you probably shouldn't play on the only difficulty that offers a challenge. And honestly, that's what I'd recommend, since the force abilities are pretty fun to mix into your combat. You unlock more ways to bully the space fascists as you progress through the story, and it was genuinely fun experimenting with each new ability as I earned it. Going from simply being able to hold someone in place to blasting entire squadrons into Wilhelm screams is the exact type of power fantasy that I imagine when I think of Star Wars. So why the fuck am I being gimped for engaging with the combat just because I wanted to be a gamer? I'd love to engage with it. Hell, I'd marry this shit if the higher difficulties didn't turn the skill tree into a roadblock to the next force upgrade. Look at all of these different abilities that I would feel motivated to use if they didn't require Cal to get his fucking midichlorians up. But no, instead... Okay, never mind, this shit's fucking sick. But I'll be honest, it gets a bit repetitive fighting the sperm soldiers across 5 different planets. I know it's a bit ironic for the autist to complain about something being repetitive, but considering Fallen Order is Frankenstein out of whatever Respawn could scrounge up from 09's Arkham Asylum and Dark Souls, I think I'm justified here. I had the hardest time figuring out what the fuck to even say about this game's combat, and I could not for the life of me understand why. So, after throwing myself into the digital cesspool that is Twitter, I finally came to the realization that there's not much to say about Fallen Order's combat because it's just there. See, what makes these games fun is the amount of utility you get with the variety of gadgets you have at your disposal. Being able to swap to whichever web blast or battering I need on the fly keeps things fresh, even though I've been beating the shit out of the same 5 guys in the same 3 environments. Fallen Order doesn't have that. All you get is the force and the ability to change your lightsaber to turbo mode to cover twice the area at half the speed. They almost brought me back with dual sabers, but immediately lost me again when I realized it's just another big swing that uses the fucking force. Remember how I said it really makes you feel like Star Wars? What I meant by that is there's this vast ocean of untapped potential just waiting to be used to deliver a fresh and exciting experience. But for some fucking reason, we're pigeonholed into one specific style because that's what works and what we know is safe. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. On the other hand, what makes these games fun is their reliance on the player learning the various movesets of all the unique enemies and bosses in order to overcome challenges in whatever playstyle they prefer. Fallen Order almost has this. There's actually a decent amount of variety to the Stormtroopers, surprisingly. You've got Stick Guy with cheese, Big Stick Guy with shield, Gun Guy, Warhammer 40k, Destiny 2 Hunter, Hammer Time, Where's My Hug Bot, Destiny 2 Hunter but closer, Sparky, and Boom Man. In addition to this, every planet has its own unique creatures ranging from the undead to rats to spiders. Why is it always fucking spiders? As far as boss fights go, however, to say it's lacking would be an understatement. See, while the Souls games tend to have a plethora of interesting or engaging boss fights required to complete the story, Fallen Order has, like, 4. And before some turbo nerd comes for my throat in the comments, I'm well aware that there are 6 boss fights required to finish this story, but since 3 of them are against the same fucking character, I'm not going to count it. Now, you might have noticed that I said there are only 4 boss fights required to finish the story. There are optional boss fights on each planet that you can stumble across, which is admittedly a nice way to encourage exploration. However, given that these bosses are all just bigger versions of the biggest monsters with a bigger health bar and bigger damage, it feels less like a test of skill and more so a test of how many times you can take getting one shot before the dark side starts looking like a good option. You know, I'm kind of over game devs crutching on artificial difficulty the same way I'm over Star Wars crutching on Tatooine. Sure, it's a perfectly safe option, but you can only frame it so many ways before the novelty wears off and you're left with a dry, stale, grainy taste in your mouth. And that's where I'll give this game some credit. They managed to tell a Star Wars story without Tatooine, which I didn't think was possible. Rather than sticking to barren wastelands, Respawn treated us to sprawling vistas with lush terrains and jaw-dropping scenery. And Dathomir. No matter what planet I was on, emerging from cramped cave-like systems to cinematic landscapes never failed to drop my jaw and cream my jorts. Even Dathomir. I don't care what your opinion on this game is, if you don't think every planet is a work of art, seek therapy. Yes, that includes Dathomir, because even though it is objectively the worst planet, at least it's not Tatooine. I've got more to say about the planets, but I think those thoughts are best expressed as we come across them in the story, so let's get into that. Right out the gate, Respawn subverts the expectations of your average Star Wars story. Instead of dropping you on a planetary desert, the game drops you on a planetary junkyard in the shoes of Cal Kestis, the Ginger Jedi. You're tasked with climbing through this old Imperial ship to make some repairs, and this functions as a fantastic tutorial. You're familiarized with basically every movement mechanic you'll need for the rest of the game. Climbing, swinging, and sliding your way through this wreck, you make your way to the couplings your boss needs you to fix. Not the safest job, but hey, anything for that paycheck, right? It's either that or suffer a life-threatening injury and bank off that sweet, sweet workers' comp. Speaking of which, rig collapses, you and your bro go on the slip and slide of a lifetime, he eats shit, you hang yourself, not like that, and catch bro with the Force. This would be tight if being a Jedi wasn't fucking illegal. Bro's a bro though, and swears he won't tell anyone, so you both hop on a train and one dark side dream sequence later you wake up to the whole junkyard getting interrogated. Honestly, I'm impressed with the Sith's efficiency. Some ginger uses telekinesis once and they're on planet shutting shit down within the hour. No surprise, they're looking for Cal, and since this is Star Wars, somebody's gotta die. And with our only options being Cal and his best friend, the one character we've had a chance at building an emotional attachment to, the pickings are looking kinda slim. Prof sacrifices himself trying to get the heat off Cal, so naturally Cal whips out a lightsaber in a fit of rage, cause let's be real, what Jedi wouldn't? One swing later and Cal gets thrown off a cliff, landing on another train. Turns out the Sith have also seen Star Wars because they know that simply throwing somebody off a cliff doesn't do the job, and now you're fighting your way across this train as it collapses around you. Once again, I've gotta give props to this for being an amazing tutorial. It doesn't throw every mechanic at you all at once, but rather introduces them as they become relevant to the gameplay. And you get to use your lightsaber as a flashlight, which is by far the coolest thing you can do with it. One train wreck and surprisingly convenient rescue later, you fight Fem Vader for the first time to learn how lightsaber fights work. And since this is still the tutorial, nobody wins here. Cal just bails out on a ship with his new crew so that we can actually start the story. Naturally, to set up a story, we need to be fed exposition. So, after learning that Cal can touch objects and relive their memories via the Force, we roll up to Bogano with our new mentor Seer and our new pilot Grease. I tried to turn his name into a D's nuts joke, but I couldn't find a creative enough way to do it, so this is what you're stuck with. Maybe. I'll see if I can work one in. Seer tells Cal that he needs to talk to Eno Cordova, the old Jedi Master that used to live here, so that we can learn about the magic box we need to find in order to save all the Jedi younglings from getting 86 by Order 66. The one thing Seer didn't mention is that Cordova's fucking dead, which means we get to meet his old droid, BD-1. I would die for him. Cal talks to Cordova's hollow ghost, learns to wall run, and finds the temple that the MacGuffin is stored in. The temple basically tells Cal to go fuck himself and come back when he learns why Jedi aren't allowed to, which means we're off to explore some new planets and learn space magic from aliens. Which brings us to Zepho, if you're following the quest marker. Sure, you could be a badass and jump straight to Dathomir, but I personally prefer plowing through a plethora of plaster-painted platoons atop gorgeous mountain vistas over getting railed by zombies and exploding spiders. Why the fuck is it always spiders? Doesn't matter, right now we're on Zepho, looking for temples from the ancient alien race, the Zepho. But so is the Empire, because they also want the Dox Box, go figure. Good news is, they built us a path straight to the temple. Bad news is, every part of this path is a fucking death trap. Good thing we have a dedicated jump button, or else we'd have some problems. Thankfully, the only problems we actually have to solve are how we can use our one Force ability to parkour through these puzzles. If this is stumping you, feel free to pause the video until you figure it out. Don't worry, I'll wait. Now, for the rest of you with basic brain-thumb choreography, shouts out Punk Dunk for that one, we're past the point where we're mindlessly hitting the jump button and on to the point where we're putting our heads through desks because we have to use our brains. And the jump button. I'm talking about the Zepho ruins. These serve as puzzle rooms as well as unlock locations for new Force powers which aren't very powerful. But you already know how I feel about that. How do I feel about these puzzles? Surprisingly, it's the same as the combat. There's not much to say about them because there's not much to them. All the puzzles boil down to looking at an object, seeing if it glows, then using force push or force pull and going through the door you've unlocked with a small amount of platforming involved. I'm not saying they're bad, because they're not. I'm just saying that if I had to rehabilitate brain surgery victims, I'd probably start here. Now that that's out of the way, Cal solves big ball puzzles with big brain by learning big push, fights big robot, and finds big clue. The big clue is that our boy Eno was buddy-buddy with a Wookiee general over on Kashyyyk, which means we're on our way to Australia, Planetary Edition. One quick space trip later, we learn that Grease is a gambling addict that owes a shit ton of money to a shit ton of people. Seer used to be a Jedi until Order 66 happened and she lost her Padawan, and I can't help but be eclipsed by the amount of foreshadowing going on here. The gang pulls up to Kashyyyk and surprise, surprise, the fucking Empire's here. Naturally, Cal has to do something about it, so what's our game plan? Rendezvous with the Wookiees and strategize? Join up with the rebels and strategize? Land somewhere and strategize? Dude, this is fucking Star Wars. If you wanted strategy, then you came to the wrong place. We're built on fucking around and praying to the Force that we don't find out. So, what's Cal's grand plan? Skydive into the ocean, hijack an AT-AT, and blow out more backs than Johnny Sins. That's fucking Star Wars right there. After saving some Wookiee hide, Cal rendezvous with the rebels and gets told that if he wants to speak with the general, he's got to find the general because nobody knows where he is. Might be held captive with the rest of the Wookiee forces though, so it'd sure be convenient if you could break them out for us. Just gotta get through the Imperial base and giant fucking spiders. What the fuck? Why is it always fucking spiders? Anyway, Cal makes his way to and through the Imperial base where you as the player get to meet the security droid. Fuck these guys. I don't want to harp on the combat again, but seriously, some of these enemy designs suck harder than the sequel trilogy, and for some godforsaken reason, they all come straight out of Kashyyyk. You know what really fucks up a flow state? Stun attacks. You know what every enemy on Kashyyyk seems to specialize in? Fucking stun attacks. The security droid hits like a semi, which is made even worse when you're fighting two of the damn things and they Jujutsu Kaisen combo your ass back to the last meditation circle. Sure, great exercise in practicing your dodge timing, but considering every single fight is an exercise in our Lord and Savior B button, I don't think we need this. Good news is the security droids become way more bearable when you find the BD-1 upgrade that lets them turn these hunks of junk to your side. Bad news is this doesn't exist for the fucking spiders. Why is it always fucking spiders? Better news though, if you manage to outrun 8 legs long enough, you can time a deflect and fucking one-shot them out of existence. Sometimes. I think. This is probably a good time to point out that while recording this gameplay, I had an issue where all my inputs were being read twice. Finally figured out that if you're running Fallen Order through Steam, you don't need to have DS4 windows open to read your controller because guess what problem that causes? So, to summarize, fuck 12, fuck spiders, fuck DS4 Windows, back to the story. After wiping the floor with Imperial forces and freeing the Wookiee slaves, Cal gets bent yet again when he can't find the one guy he came to talk to. Back to the drawing board. The drawing board is Zepho, this time to a different ancient temple located at the bottom of this crashed Imperial Star Destroyer. Can't see any way this could go wrong. Oh hey, it's the second sister, time for a boss fight! Honestly, I don't have much to say about this one. The attacks are pretty easy to read, and despite being a Jedi, the second sister just doesn't use the Force all that much. So you can reasonably get past it on your first try, and if you didn't see this coming through the shade of all this foreshadowing after winning, Cal finds out that the second sister is actually hot as fuck, but also Seer's old Padawan Trilla. Trilla's pissed at you, Cal's pissed at Seer, Seer's pissed at herself, and I'm pissed that we've had to go through 2 fucking temples to find out we need another MacGuffin in order to access the main MacGuffin in the galaxy's biggest fetch quest. And now Cal's getting kidnapped. God fucking damn it. See, I'm all about games slipping in sections where the main character loses most of their gadgets and has to solve puzzles using brains over brawn, which is exactly what this section is, and for the most part it's pretty fun. You solve puzzles using the Force to reroute powers so that you can find BD-1 and get your shit back, and honestly I was pretty excited that it seemed like we were getting a small stealth section to break up the gameplay loop. So you can imagine how disappointed I was when they put Cal in a fucking gladiator match against literally every enemy type you fought up to this point, including the fucking spiders. God damn it, they're everywhere. Can you tell I'm arachnophobic? Now, look, I appreciate this segment for how it characterizes Grease by showing that his debts are so great that bounty hunters are willing to kidnap a fucking Jedi as payment. But did we really need the gladiator match? Like, did we really need to pad the game with this? I can understand if this was just to gauge interest in a horde mode, which, if it was, fair enough. But if not, then I could skip this entire segment and not miss a single story beat, because as soon as we get back on the ship, we get a call from General Tarful, who's ready to talk now. So we have to fly back to Kashyyyk, talk to this general, and get told to climb a fucking tree. Sure, fair enough. Seems oh my god, the tree's alive and the fucking spiders are here. God, please. So, we climb this tree, unlock the ability to dive underwater, and fucking double jump, shouts out to the Force. We also get jumped by the Empire, time for scripted parkour. Credit where it's due, the scenery is absolutely fucking breathtaking, and getting chased by this ship turns the otherwise mundane climbing into an exciting sequence where you have to utilize all the abilities you've unlocked up to this point in order to survive. Love it when this game makes you use the abilities you've unlocked. Wish the combat could have gotten the memo. Speaking of, reaching the top of this tree rewards you with the second boss fight against the ninth sister. Honestly, this is a pretty good fight. She has a unique moveset with short windows available for damage, as well as a second phase where she sets her lightsaber to turbo mode and speed blitzes your shit. I don't think it comes as a surprise that this is my favorite boss fight in the game. The scenery coupled with the score and the combat just creates this feeling that I've only ever gotten from Star Wars. And outside of one other scene, I spent the rest of the game chasing that. It just makes it all the more bittersweet that this boss fight was done so well, only to be followed up by fucking Dathomir. As much as I'd love to skim over this planet in the most reductive way possible, it's actually significant to the story, so I feel like I need to talk about it. But being reductive is fun, so for the sake of having my cake and eating it too, fuck this planet-wide FromSoft swamp-level wannabe built on spit, sticks, and necromancy. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into what makes this planet my personal least favorite. And if you think you've got it figured out, no, it's not the acid spiders. Get fucked, you don't know me. Sure, I hate fighting these things, not because they're creepy, but because there's so fucking many of them, Jesus Christ. No, this planet is my least favorite because it's such a slog to get through. I'm well aware that there's a lot of backtracking going on with the other two planets, but at least every time you come back to these planets, you're discovering a new area. Case in point, Zepho. You come back to this place like 3 different times, and each time you come back, there's somehow something new that you haven't discovered. Dathomir, on the other hand, opens up the planet with a witch bitch who tells you that Jedi are scum, raises the dead, and refuses to elaborate. Fair enough, but we didn't come all this way just to give up on the Jedi. What is this, a fucking Star Wars movie? We haven't even gotten our mandated mental breakdown that comes with the hero's journey. We'll get there though. We always do. And after meeting the eerily wise old man that happens to be not dead and also stranded on this planet, we're right on track once Cal steps on this platform and fucking plummets to rock bottom. Almost. We slip and slide our way to safety and, well, can't go up, so I guess we gotta go down and pray that there's some conveniently placed tool to help us scale these unscalable walls. Hey, look at that, it's a conveniently placed tool that lets Cal scale these unscalable walls. Son of a bitch, it's another boss fight. Kind of. I'm not really sure if I'd count this, since it's really just a glorified QuickTime event with a huge fucking health bar slapped on the screen, but hey, if you've missed out on all the planetary-specific bosses up to this point, here's a taste of what you've been missing out on. Only difference is that Phase 2 of this fight is on par with Rogue One's cinematography, while Phase 2 of the Planet Monsters is on par with the sequel trilogy's storyboard in that it doesn't fucking exist. Anyway, after beating the world's biggest button prompt, Cal gets to take his new climbing gear for a spin and finish crawling through the proverbial hell of Dathomir's inner crust. Solve more puzzles, kill more zombies, climb more walls, bada bing, bada boom, you're back on the surface, staring down the entrance to the third and final Zepho tomb. All Cal has to do is open the door and he can't. Weird. Let's just meditate on it. Holy shit, Cal's a kid again. Good news, boys! We finally got our non-combat puzzle segment with emotional story beats behind it. This flashback features Cal at the start of Order 66, where his master has him sneak through the ship's maintenance shafts to prep an escape pod. Cal, being a Padawan, loses his lightsaber and can't get the pod open fast enough, meaning Master dies defending us. We rocket off the ship and Jero Tapal hands us his lightsaber while giving his final words, "Trust only in the Force." How wholesome. You know, looking back on this script, it probably would have been a good idea to mention that Cal's been learning his Force powers via childhood flashbacks to when his master was training him prior to being murked by Seaman Team 6. But I don't think it would be very useful of my time or yours to describe multiple flashbacks set in the exact same room, so for the sake of brevity, you learn how to wall run on Bogano, force push in the first Zepho tomb, force pull in the second Zepho tomb, and double jump in the Kashyyyk world tree. Get it? Got it? Good. Time for our patented hero's journey mandated mental breakdown. Now it's Star Wars. Cal's dead master comes to him in a vision, calls him a bitch, dog walks his shit, and Cal breaks his lightsaber in a fit of rage. Now, I may not be the biggest Star Wars nerd, but even I know that no lightsaber means no Jedi, which is a bit of a problem since you've got to be a Jedi to get into these tombs. So we leave the temple and have a conversation with the wise old man, who happens to be a former Jedi turned Sith that came here in search of power and gaslit the Night Sisters into giving it to him. Oh hey, the Night Sister showed up. Let's see what she has to— oh my god, she's hot. Anyway, she's pissed about this, understandably, which means more zombie sisters. Tight. We don't have a lightsaber, so we book it back to the ship, have a crisis with Seer, and hightail it to Ilos so that Cal can get a shiny new crystal for his new lightsaber. We land on the planet and make our way through biting winds and frozen wastelands until we enter the old temple that all the young Padawans made a pilgrimage to so they could build their lightsabers. After using your Force-powered puzzle-solving skills to melt some ice, it's time to take a swim and then solve more puzzles, this time with some parkour. Oh, and the Empire's showing up now because of course they are. No worries, just got one last swim and wow, this is a long one. Hey, Cal, you feeling okay? You look a little cold. Oh my god, he's fucking dead. Wait, is that— No, it can't be. Young Cal? Pulling big Cal out the water? Damn, Star Wars therapy goes hard. Glad we learned to trust our inner child, or else we might not have gotten this crystal. It broke. The crystal fucking broke. Of course it did. Why wouldn't it? Can't have anything nice, can we? Might as well just curl up and die. But no, BD has to roll up and give us the motivational hologram we needed to see. Stupid droid, kickstarting Cal's will to live with a heartwarming tale of his former master, encrypting his memories and telling the little guy that he'll unlock them when he finds somebody he trusts. The audacity this man has to believe in us from beyond the grave. Can't let him down though, so let's see it through. Cal takes the crystal pieces and tinkers them into a new lightsaber, unlocking the power to use his thumbs and disconnect the blade so he can do an even bigger swing. Now we're talking. Just in time, too, because the Empire's really here and we wouldn't want to keep them waiting now, would we? But if we want to join the party, we gotta cut through the crowd, fight the bouncers, then break it down on the dance floor. Well, party's over, guess it's time to leave. Shame there's an AT-ST blocking the path. Guess we'll just fight the— Holy shit, there's two of them?! Can't say I blame him, you gotta take every advantage you can get, right? After we recover from the gank of a lifetime, we can finally get back to Dathomir and grab the MacGuffin we need. Right after this boss fight. But this time we get some help from our new goth witch friend after we mansplain to her what it means to be a Jedi. Honestly, this one almost earns the spot for my least favorite boss fight in the game. Its only saving grace is that the arena is dope as fuck and Talos has a pretty unique moveset. My main gripe here is that you can't really go on the offensive that much because after you land 3 hits on him, any follow-up attacks immediately repel you across the arena to put you back on the defensive. But he's aggressive and as you deal damage to him, he adds attacks to his pre-existing moves, requiring you to think on your feet and try to time your deflex to get Hocus Pocus to jump in. He's also the one boss that throws things at you besides his lightsaber, which means you can actually use Force Push for something other than staggering. Overall, 6 out of 10. Not garbage, but it could be better. Let's kick his ass, grab our sphere, fight some monsters, and recruit the magic space witch to the team. Her name's Marin. I want her to step up. Time to get the Docs box. The whole squad pulls up to Bogano because every good journey ends in the same place it begins, right? Cal makes his way into the temple, which now accepts him as he's finally learned what it means to be a Jedi. Gotta love character growth, right? Cal finds this force wall, and upon touching it, he communes with the Zepho, who show him what dangers the future holds if he takes this box to raise a new Jedi Order. Cal becomes their master, and it feels like there's a new hope in the galaxy until the Empire strikes back and 86's the younglings. Again. Except this time, there won't be a return of the Jedi, because there won't be any left if the Empire gets their hands on the box. Good thing we got here first. Let's just, take this box. Okay, guess what time it is? Boss fight, baby! Second sister, round 2, let's fucking go! No idea how she found us, but that doesn't matter. We're not the same soulless ginger that she fought the first time. We got therapy. So let's just disarm her real quick and, hey, remember Cal's little ability to relive the memories of objects connected to the Force? You know how Trilla has a lot of unresolved trauma since becoming the second sister? You want to take a guess as to what happens when Cal takes her lightsaber? Yeah, not my boy's brightest move. After experiencing secondhand PTSD, Cal comes to and Trilla's gone, plus the Empire's here, plus we still have her lightsaber. Tight. Let's get back to the ship and chase her ass down, yeah? Which means we're on to the final mission, where we airdrop into the ocean, swim into the base, and blitz our way to Trilla. Honestly, I love this mission. It's such a great way to show how far you've come from the starting mission where you were struggling against a few stormtroopers to storming their base with a full arsenal of tricks up your sleeve. Really helpful when you interrupt an Imperial training session and have to fight every foot soldier enemy type you've encountered. And I should note that while I gave the gladiator-style arena combat some shit earlier, I actually like it here. Partly because the Imperial soldiers are actually entertaining to fight, but mostly because there aren't any fucking spiders. Thank God. And once you and Seer have absolutely dog-walked your way through an entire fortress, it's time for you to face your demons and fight Trilla. For the 3rd time. But this time you actually get to take her health bar to 0. And yet, somehow, despite fighting her 2 times prior, she still rocked my shit here. Since we'd never really gotten to see her full kit in the previous fights, I was absolutely blindsided when she broke out the flashbangs and one-shot grab attacks, but hey, I'm not going to complain about getting choked out like this. Sure, it'd be nice of her to buy me dinner first, but it's not like I'm going out of my way to be a perfect gentleman either. Only courtesy I'm affording her is not straight up killing her after I win this fight, but that's mainly because Seer's also here, and let's be real, having the crazy hot villain switch sides wouldn't be the wildest thing to happen. Honestly, kind of a shame that we couldn't get her on our team soon. Does anyone else hear that breathing? Oh shit, is that Darth fucking Vader? GG Trilla, it was nice knowing you. Oh, Seer, no, that's a terrible... Okay, just me? Guess this is the final boss fight, huh? Oh, he's lore accurate. Oh, fuck, he's lore accurate. Hey, remember how I said that there was one other moment that gave me the Star Wars feeling? This is that moment. Staring down the most powerful Sith and realizing one swing in that your only option is to fucking run while Vader rips the base apart around you is peak Star Wars. Narrowly escaping him at the start and having to run through the base not knowing when or where he's going to come from creates such an exhilarating experience that I don't even get from most horror games. And just when you think you're safe and finally getting the hell out of here, he's there. Honestly, if it wasn't for my boy BD, this would probably end up on Watch Mojo's top 10 list of most tragic gaming moments. I guess we can give some props to Seer for pulling the old switcheroo and not actually dying, but swimming to the surface with only one breathing device after she falls unconscious from tapping into the Force isn't really how I pictured spending my last living moments. Cal succumbs to the downsides of being human, and this is where I'd end the summary if Marin didn't pull some witchy magic to get Cal and Seer back on the ship. Once they come to, it's time for Cal to decide what to do with this MacGuffin that we spent the past 8 hours fetch questing the galaxy for. Of course, the most obvious choice is to take a lightsaber to it so that there's no risk of it falling into the Empire's hands. Based decision, honestly, fuck rebuilding the Order. Why not just go off and have fun space adventures with your newfound family? Shit, I'd do it too if I got the choice. Overall, 8 out of 10. Solid game. I never want to talk about Star Wars again. Really hope you didn't plan on going anywhere though. You know how this works if you watched my last video. Story is just the tip of the iceberg. Now we get to dive into some shit. However, I've got just a couple more grievances with the gameplay that I only noticed after writing the first section of this script. The first being the combat. Shocking, I know, but I'm not bitching about how the combat absolutely falls the fuck apart when you're fighting more than one enemy this time. Instead, I'd like to point out that while Fallen Order seems to have taken a lot of liberties from the Dark Souls franchise, immunity frames on dodging doesn't seem to be one of them. Or at least, that's what it feels like. So I'm gonna operate on the premise that I'm right. Now, assuming there aren't any iframes when you dodge, I don't have a problem with that. Honestly, I think this would be a fantastic way to nudge the player into relying more on the parry mechanic and encouraging a more aggressive playstyle. But if that's the case, then what the fuck is the thought process behind giving every enemy an attack that can't be parried? Because that only highlights my problems with the dodge mechanic. It's one thing if I dodge the wrong way or at the wrong time and get my ass clapped because of it, that's on me, no questions asked. It is another thing entirely when my only option is to spam the dodge button and pray that my hitbox is far enough away to not get caught in whatever bullshit jump attack they threw at me. I just can't help but feel like this game would have heavily benefited from either the inclusion of iframes or the exclusion of unblockable attacks. And if anybody has some evidence that proves me wrong on the whole iframes thing, I'd love to see it. I'll wait, too. Lord knows I've got the time. I mean, I've logged over 60 hours on an 8-hour game, and 50 of those were this year alone. Thing is, that could have been shorter too if it weren't for the unskippable cutscenes. Look, I get it. This game's absolute fucking eye candy. The devs want to show off their hard work. That is totally fine. But why does every single cutscene need to be unskippable? It kind of kills the replayability of the game because there are some sections that I would love the opportunity to play through again, but since there's no chapter selection, the only way to do that is by having a separate save file at that specific section or starting the game over from the beginning. Do you have any idea how annoying it was to start editing this video and then realize I'm missing an entire section of gameplay on Kashyyyk about halfway through the game? Let me tell you, it's pretty fucking annoying. Oh my god, it feels good to get that off my chest. Now, let's move on because, like I said at the beginning, I've got a whole movie to go through, so stick around because I'm about to take The Last Jedi's characters and run them the fuck down. Y'all ready? I'm not. Let's get into it. Now, I know I said I've got a whole movie to go through, but I'm not actually planning on summarizing the plot, mainly because I don't want this video to be much longer than it needs to, but partly because you already know it. Yes, I am implying that The Last Jedi and Fallen Order are the same story. No, I am not going to argue with you in the comments on this. I've already tried to have this conversation a few times with my friends, but every time I bring it up, it just devolves into them bitching about the sequel trilogy. Can't say I blame them, but that's a topic for a different video. Point is, I'm fucking tired of hearing it, so now I'm going to subject you to me bitching about people bitching about The Last Jedi. Don't worry, this ties into the game, I promise. Now, the general consensus is that The Last Jedi is the worst movie in the sequel trilogy, and for a while I was part of that crowd, I'll admit it. Maybe that's due to me making the mistake of getting an opinion from the internet. Maybe it's due to my first viewing being on an airplane half asleep. Maybe it's because the production for this whole trilogy was fucked from the jump. There's a lot of factors, but from what I can recall, the most popular ones were Rose, Rey, and Rian Johnson in order from most to least controversial. I think. I'd check, but that means combing through the Star Wars community, and I'd like to minimize my interaction with them as much as possible, because nobody hates Star Wars quite like a Star Wars fan, am I right? That being said, let's take a look at why they hate this movie and why I think they're wrong. Starting with Rian Johnson and ending with Rey for good reason, you'll see. Now, in order to understand why Rian Johnson is so disliked for directing this movie, you need to know a bit about the development cycle for this trilogy and how much of an absolute clusterfuck it was. The first and third movies in this trilogy were directed by J.J. Abrams, who has a history of kicking off successful multi-movie franchise reboots such as Star Wars Chris Columbus Edition and Tom Cruise Stunt Spy Guy, meaning that he was never going to direct anything beyond the first one, and I think I would have preferred it that way. See, Abrams isn't the most fond of the Star Wars prequel movies, which is a common theme among those that grew up with the original trilogy. This is really just another way to say that Star Wars fans don't enjoy fun and feel like they know space opera better than the guy that made the space opera, case in point, The Force Awakens. Beat for beat, this movie is a reboot of A New Hope in the truest sense of the word, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently. This movie is a good start to the trilogy, following a formula that's worked since Gandalf kidnapped Frodo and Harry woke up under the stairs. It brings back some old things, introduces some new things, and is Star Wars. Pretty solid jumping point for a new director to continue the story and put their own spin on it, which is exactly what Johnson did. However, certain portions of the fanbase didn't quite like that, so Abrams was brought back for the 9th movie, where he essentially retcons everything Johnson did in the 8th movie. And as much as I'd love to dive into this as a case study for what happens when Star Wars fans write Star Wars, I should probably get to the point I'm trying to make here. Rian Johnson delivered some of the most entertaining Star Wars media to us on a silver platter, and that got taken away from us by a bunch of fucking turbo nerds crying, "Rey's a Mary Sue, Rose sucks, lightspeed doesn't work like that, fuck you." We could have had a trilogy about Rey learning what it means to be a Jedi and dealing with the reality that by the end of this movie, she is the last Jedi, having to learn all these things that Luke and others were taught on her own, while at the same time trying to stop Darth Vader's grandson from becoming supreme ruler of the galaxy. But no, instead we get the Emperor returning via Fortnite, Rey being a Palpatine for some reason, a galaxy-wide fetch quest, and a final battle consisting of I'm all the Sith versus, well, I'm all the Jedi, with a Harry Potter beam battle for the fate of the universe. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I disagree with all the reasons people didn't like this movie. I'm not the biggest fan of Rose as an addition either, since it feels like her character was just thrown in so we could get more exposition about Finn. If she'd been introduced in the previous movie, then maybe her inclusion as a potential love interest would have felt more justified. But having her take away Finn's big heroic moment, because the two ethnically diverse characters need to be together, rubs me the wrong way too. That being said, I still feel bad for the actress being written out almost entirely in the next movie, especially after she was bullied off social media for having the audacity to play a female character in Star Wars. Same with Rey. Shit, I'm not gonna sit here and say that she isn't a Mary Sue because she kind of is. I just hate agreeing with that criticism because it seems like most of the people who spout the Mary Sue claim are just looking for an excuse to be sexist. Sure, you can call Rey a Mary Sue all you want, but if you keep looping back around to saying she's trying too hard to be a Skywalker, then congratulations, you've created the Mary Sue of arguments. If you're going to criticize her character, then you could at least point out that all her interesting character development happens off-screen, or that she never faces any consequences for her actions, or that all of her problems are conveniently solved by Deus Ex Machina instead of her looking for solutions herself. There's plenty to criticize about this movie, and rightfully so, but the one piece of criticism I refuse to acknowledge is the lightspeed shipwreck scene. This whole sequence goes hard as fuck, and I do not give a shit if it breaks space battles. Like, are you kidding me? Look at this shit, dude! I really don't understand how people don't enjoy this movie when it's just so fucking fun to watch. Like the fight scene near the end of the movie before the ship gets split in half, that's tight. The fight between Luke and Kylo, that's tight. The opening scene where Poe leads a bombing run on an Imperial Star Destroyer, that's fucking tight. I could go on, but this video is already edging 40 minutes, and I'm sure you'd like me to get back to talking about the game, so I will. But I'll wrap this up by saying that The Last Jedi is tight, you should watch it. So I want to circle back around to Rey here, not to harp on how she's a bad character because she's really not, at least in the first two movies. We don't need to talk about Rise of the Skywalkers. I want to come back to this because I really don't understand how people can hate Rey while loving Cal since they're practically the same fucking character. Bold take, I know. I've told this to two different people and both of them hit me with, no they're not. And you know what? Maybe they're right. I can't really see the similarities between two characters that were orphaned via Palpatine, forced to scrap old Empire ships to live, chased off planet by the Empire, have the ability to relive memories through the Force, establish a connection to the Force with the help of a former Jedi who cut themselves off from it after being tempted by the dark side, and go on a galaxy-wide fetch quest with a ragtag team of misfits to stop the Empire while learning what it means to be a Jedi. I mean, come on, they have different genitals. There's no way they can be the same character, right? Actually, now that I think about it, they do have one thing in common. Despite being the main character in a Star Wars story, they're both somehow the least interesting characters in their respective stories. Thing is, they're both the least interesting for completely different reasons. Like, Rey isn't interesting due to some bad writing choices, while Cal isn't interesting due to every other character being written so well that they overshadow him. I'm gonna be honest, it's pretty hard for me to care about your main character when his whole thing is being a soulless vessel to imprint the Jedi 101 traits onto. Why do you think they made him ginger? But seriously, every major character in this game is just vastly more intriguing than the guy you play as. And I don't have a problem with it. I feel like I would if the characters in the world were any worse, but they're truly my favorite thing about this game. We don't even have to get into all of the characters. We can just talk about the crewmates on your ship. We'll go through them in the order that they're introduced, which means we're starting with Cere. She's our mentor figure / exposition giver, but you actually get to learn a lot about her pretty quickly. She used to be a Jedi, but after the events of Order 66, she cut herself off from the Force. She'd tried to defend her Padawans, but failed and was captured by the Empire, while Trilla was tortured and turned into an Inquisitor. Upon learning that the Empire had turned Trilla to the dark side, Cere tapped into it herself, and after using it to escape, she cut her connection from the Force entirely. She never really forgave herself for it, and it's obvious that she's still grappling with the fallout of her own decisions. That's why she's helping Cal, because she sees him as a second chance to do right by Trilla, and maybe, if he can heal his connection with the Force, she can too. Cere's even pretty involved during the final mission, wielding Trilla's old lightsaber to formally title Cal as a Jedi Knight before helping him tear through the Inquisitor's base. But right at the end, when Vader's stalking down Cal, Cere shows up to save us. Unfortunately, the only option she has is to tap back into the Force, specifically the dark side, which Vader obviously encourages. I mean, why wouldn't he? If Cere's strong enough to bring him to his knees in the name of good, then imagine what she'd be capable of as an Inquisitor. And I think that's exactly what would have happened if Cal hadn't turned the whole base into the Water Temple to stop her. I feel like there's still a lot more to explore with her character, and I just wish the game was a bit longer so we could have actually explored that. Unfortunately, it's not, so let's talk about Grease, who's like the Han and Chewie of this adventure. Wait, Grease, Han, Chewie, Grease. Chew on Grease nuts, let's fucking go, I told you I'd get it. So anyway, Grease is our pilot who's only flying us because he's racked up so much gambling debt that he'd rather help two intergalactic terrorists track down children to fight the Empire than pay it back. Pretty valid, honestly. Makes sense as to why he's a bit untrusting and abrasive when we first meet him, but he's getting us where we need to go and we're not dead. Really gives off the vibes of that retail employee who's been there way too long and gets by on the bare minimum but can't be fired because replacing them would cost way more than keeping them employed. But the more you hang around them, you learn that they're doing way more than the bare minimum and should probably get a pay raise, but they're pretty content with where they're at and they just want to vibe, cook you steak in the off hours, take care of some plants. They actually do care, but they've just got attachment issues because everybody they've ever gotten close to around here just fucking dips one day with no warning. In case I haven't beaten this metaphor over your head hard enough, this is Grease. Dude just wants to chill on his ship and not get kidnapped by bounty hunters. Listening to him talk about some of his life experiences while blitzing through hyperspace is a nice little reprieve between exploration, and watching him become more friendly as you spend more time on the ship really helps him feel like an actual character instead of pilot alien NPC. I don't think he's necessarily an amazing character or even a great one. Really, I'd hesitate to call him a good character. Okay, he's exceptionally average, and I wish we'd had more time to explore his relationship with the bounty hunters that captured Cal, rather than a throwaway mission to pad playtime. Hashtag justice for Grease, my man deserved better. Let's see, if we're going in order, then that means the next crewmate is BD1. But if I say anything about my boy, it's going to come across as extremely biased. So I won't. All I'm going to say is BD1 is the best character in this game, and I refuse to elaborate. So let's talk about Merrin. As far as the main cast goes, I'd say she's easily the weakest, but that's not necessarily her fault. If I'm being real here, I genuinely think she's the most interesting character in this entire fucking game, but she gets introduced so late into the game that all we get to know about her is she's hot, magic, and probably autistic. Does autism exist in Star Wars? God damn it. Anyway, I'm a bit hesitant to throw out the autism diagnosis since I'm not qualified, but I'd argue that making a near hour-long video about Star Wars is pretty fucking autistic, so I'd like to think I know what I'm talking about. Granted, the only real argument I have for why Marin might be autistic is a few bits of dialogue you can hear during her very brief time with the crew and just the overall vibe I get off of her. Yes, I see the irony of the autist trusting himself to read behavioral cues. No, I'm not going to reconsider because of it. I'm just going to operate on the presumption that she is, cause damn, half-decent representation in my favorite entertainment medium hits hella different. Anyway, back to Marin being the most interesting character in the whole game. When we first meet her, she's pretty fucking pissed that a Jedi showed up because the last dude who came here with a lightsaber tried to gaslight her into teaching him magic. Props to Respawn, they really know how to write men. So, as we know, Marin raises the dead so that Cal may join them, and after watching him climb out of hell, kill a big fucking bat, and kick Terran's ass, decides to join him. Pretty based. Now, if you've been paying attention, you may have noticed that rather than talking about what makes Marin a good character, I've just recapped the story beats she has in the game. That's because this is really all we get for her. We know her people were killed, we know she was gaslit by Terran into believing the Jedi did it, we know she's a witch, so why the fuck don't we get to learn more about her? It really feels like she was just added to the game for Deus Ex Machina, because the writers couldn't think of any other way for Cal and crew to get in and out of the Imperial base with all of their limbs still attached. Like, sure, she's got this one joking line with Grease, but I would have loved to see more of that if there was just a little bit more to the story so that we could flesh out some of these characters a bit. I don't think I should have to delay the final mission and go spelunking on different planets to hear a few dialogue lines from Marin so that Respawn can really hammer home the "her whole culture's dead, she never had friends, all planets are foreign" message. I know I said Grease got done dirty, but holy shit, Marin got absolutely fucking dumpstered in comparison. It absolutely baffles me that Respawn wrote a character who, as far as she's aware, is the only survivor of a genocide, had to bury her people by herself, and learn necromancy just to say, yeah, let's introduce her right before the game ends. We don't need to explain who she is as a person. I don't know if this was an EA issue or a Disney issue or some otherworldly interference, but it genuinely upsets me that there are so many interesting and well-written characters in this game that we don't really get the chance to learn about because the game is so fucking short. The potential is right there. It is literally in their fucking hands, and there's so little that's done with it. I know there's a lot of backlash towards games that have massive open worlds and incredibly padded playtime, but I think we can look past all that when it's a cast of interesting characters exploring an entire galaxy and interacting with each other, instead of "guy man shape, kill the bad dudes 5, this time it's personal." I swear to God, if I could swap the runtime of Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Fallen Order, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I want to spend more time in this world because it actually feels lived in. I don't really have time to get into all of it, but my favorite detail is that every now and then you'll get a dialogue snippet of Grease talking about something going missing or how he swears he's hearing noises in the ship. And sure, you might just think this is the paranoid pilot being paranoid, but if you pay close enough attention, you'll catch this little fucker sneaking around the ship and hiding under tables. I genuinely smiled the first time I found this little guy, and I'd love to have more moments like that. And Star Wars is the perfect universe to do that in since it's so diverse and fascinating. So why the fuck does Disney keep taking us back to Tatooine? God, that felt good to get off my chest. As much as I love Star Wars as a franchise, I absolutely dread talking about it on the internet because of Star Wars fans. Fuck, am I one of them now? I don't know, and I honestly don't give a shit either. I'm never talking about this fucking franchise again. Son of a bitch.
Starting nights, we both cry. Is this love or am I high? In my head or in my dreams? 20 I'm down with the sickness. I need another hit to feel alive.